My name is Nikki Campling, and I'm the Innovation and Operations Director for the Oxford Trust. And together with the Oxford Trust, Barclays Eagle Labs and Oxford Innovation, we'd like to welcome you to the next in the series of our Exit Right event, all around the funding matrix and investment. I would like to say a huge thank you to all of our sponsors this evening, Freeths, Richardsons and Bidwells, who without this wouldn't be possible. So a huge thank you to you all, and I hope you enjoy the event. Many thanks.
Well, good evening, everybody, from me. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Haywood. I'm the Managing Director of an organisation called Advanced Oxford. We are a business leadership group focused on the science, technology and innovation community, working across the whole of Oxfordshire. We are here as an organisation to connect and convene the science business community and the business community that are focused on translating science into commercial opportunity. We are working to build the best possible environment across the whole of Oxfordshire and indeed beyond for innovation to flourish. And I guess our mission is how can we make Oxfordshire the best possible place that it can be for companies to start, to grow, really importantly to be retained, and also how can we attract new companies into this ecosystem. And we do that by bringing insight, the perspectives and evidence from the business community and putting it into the hands of decision makers. So a particular focus is on supporting policy development and helping to guide investment decisions at a local, regional, super-regional and then national basis. I've been asked to moderate this panel this evening, and I'll stop talking in a minute because you didn't come to hear from me, and I'll introduce the panel. But one of the reasons that I'm moderating this evening is that we in Advanced Oxford understand how important the availability of private capital is to businesses, and particularly to science and technology businesses, in terms of getting started, scaling, growing, and hopefully turning into fully commercial companies. We recognised this issue in a piece of work that we did last year called Oxfordshire's Innovation Engine, which was a piece of work that looked across the whole of the innovation ecosystem and tried to critique it in terms of things that were working well and things that perhaps needed some attention. And whilst over the last decade, I would argue that we've seen some fantastic developments within the Oxfordshire ecosystem from an access to capital perspective, I think we would all recognise, and I'll be really surprised if I hear anything to the contrary from the people on this panel, that there's still more that needs to be done. And as a consequence, over the last 10 months or so, we've been doing a real deep dive into this issue, looking at the question of how we can diversify and grow the investor base, working across the region in order to support investable companies on their growth journey. And fantastically, we've really benefited enormously from expertise and conversations with a wide range of people, and from a fantastic steering group, and Jim is one of the people that have been helping us, and Jens, one of Richard's colleagues, also been very involved. And so I think we're going to be presenting some really interesting data, insights, and some proposals for things that we think need to change. And I've been asked just before we go into the panel to highlight a few of the things that we have found. So the first thing that I would say is we are all incredibly familiar with the fantastic contribution that the University of Oxford is making in terms of spinning out new companies and really fantastic companies based on the science and technology that is being developed, the ideas that are being developed in the university. And of course, Oxford Science Enterprise has been an absolutely pivotal part in supporting a number of those companies in terms of their investment needs and their investment journey. But it's really important also for us to recognise that there are large groups of companies that are distributed across the whole of the Oxfordshire region who are nothing to do with the university. They haven't come from university IP. They don't have any particular connection to the university, but they are also setting up really good companies and also looking for and competing for private capital. And I expect a number of you sitting in the audience would see yourselves as sitting within that category. One of the things that we've done is that we've brought together data from a number of different databases, and I expect people in the audience might be familiar with a whole range of different data intelligence platforms which are available mostly on commercial terms, like PitchBook and Dealroom, Crunchbase, Bowhurst. What we've done is we've brought together data sets from 4 key databases, and we've compared them, and we've tried to come up with what we think is a unified picture across all of those platforms of what is going on, looking at the last 10 years of investment activity. And what you might be surprised to hear is that you get an extremely partial and limited picture of what is happening in terms of investment activity if you look at just one of these platforms. On average, they contain, for the last 10 years, data on about 280 companies each. But those 280 companies are all different companies. There's overlap, but they're not the same set. So what we've done is we've been able to identify 665 distinct individual companies that are somewhere on that shared data set. And only about 125 of those are University of Oxford spin-outs, which means that the vast majority of companies that are securing investment within the region are actually sitting outside of the university ecosystem and the support mechanisms that are available. And this, I should say, is science and technology-focused companies. There are many others that sit in other sectors, but because our focus is on science and technology, that's what we've been looking at. There are well over 3,600 different investors that are supporting that cohort of 665 companies. And about 125 of them have benefited from having some form of angel investment in them. That may be one angel, it may be a syndicate, it may be several angels that are working with the company. But I think a really important message for this audience is that if you are looking for investment, you need to be really, really cautious about investing into these platforms, but also in terms of the data that they're held. Because if you're looking to understand who is investing into companies that are like you will probably only get a partial view. And there's no one version of the truth. Now, we've also supplemented the quantitative data, the data that I've been talking to you about, with qualitative data. So we've run a series of interviews and questionnaires with, on the one hand, a group of founders and managing teams to look at their experiences, and then, on the other hand, a group of investors that the majority of which are working within the Oxfordshire ecosystem. It's quite hard to get engagement from those that aren't within the ecosystem, unfortunately. but looking at perceptions of Oxford and Oxfordshire as a place to look for deal flow. And that's allowed us to come up with some really interesting insights about what we think is working well and what we think, again, needs to be improved. What we're intending to do is, and we are busy doing indeed at the moment, is to draw all of this together into what we're calling a green paper. And those of you who are as old as me may remember that once upon a time government used to produce green papers. And this was when they used to put together an evidence base and an intention around policy, and they used to set out what it was they thought that policy ought to look like. And then they'd use that for a conversation and to firm up their ideas. And so that's what we're doing. We're producing a green paper, which we're going to be publishing on the 16th of October. And that will be the start of a conversation about some of the things that we've identified and some of the things that we think need to happen as a consequence. So this event today is incredibly timely because, in a sense, we're starting to delve into many of the issues that we have identified and we've been looking at. But what I know we're going to get from the panel today is a fantastic set of insights, which I hope are going to help many of you here in the audience and those that will be watching afterwards to really think about how you engage with the investment community. Because as my final point before I introduce the panel, it won't surprise you, I am sure, at all, to learn that one of the most important things in terms of engaging with investment is about relationships. And it's about warm introductions, and it's about how people engage with each other and can help to make connections. And cold calling is not always particularly successful. So maybe we'll get a little bit of insight from our fantastic panel about how to cut through and start to make some of those relationships. So enough from me and over to the experts. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves in your own words, and I'm going to start. Jim, please.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm Jim Wilkinson, I'm a director of Oxford Science Enterprises. We started about 9 years ago with a specific remit of just investing in university spin-outs. We were very fortunate that we raised £600 million to start off with. We're about £1.1 billion now, assets under management. We've got 126 companies in our portfolio, and we're trying to make them into big enough to change the world.
Rebecca.
And I'm from Longwall Ventures. We're a local firm, although we invest all across the UK. And we've always been on the Oxford patch. Longwall's been around here for, it emerged from Oxford Technology, which is well known. And the team came out from Oxford Technology about 15 years ago. 15 years on, we've had 3 funds. The last fund was raised tail end of 2017, so 2018 sort of vintage. It was a 75 million fund. It's backed by the British Business Bank. They've got some fabulous programs to support venture capital funds. It's pretty hard to get started as a VC as well as it is to get started as a company. If you think that raising money for a company is hard, then you try raising it for a fund. We invest in all sorts of deep tech. Individually, we're a very small team. It's very old school. We're kind of the classic form of venture capital. If people say the term venture capital, then what classically will come to mind is a structure that was somebody came up with in the US 50 years ago, and none of us have been able to break out of since, which is a 10-year closed fund structure. You raise money, invest it, try and grow the companies, and try and get out again in approximately a 10-year cycle. Which is hard to do when you're an early stage investor. Discuss. But that's the cycle and that's the model. We're a group of a small group of, there's 5 of us in the firm. We invest very early on, and then we're very hands-on, what people call venture building now. It's just what Longwall's always done, which is to get quite involved in the companies and help work with them very early stage, to help work with the teams to try and help build them. You know, well, I certainly don't, and I don't think any of us pretend to bring specific expertise to those businesses that's specific to a particular market, to a particular technology, but we've done it before with lots of companies, and we've seen lots of companies go through the same journey, and that's kind of what we're bringing. I think that's probably enough.
Thank you. Mohammed, now you are coming at this from a slightly different perspective, I should just say, because you're bringing the founder-entrepreneur perspective to our discussion this evening. So please introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you. So yes, I'm the outlier in this panel. My name is Mohammed Sadiq. I'm the technical lead and co-founder of Active Needle Technology Limited. We are an ultrasonic needle company. We make ultrasonic needles for medical and medical-aligned markets. So essentially what we have is a platform ultrasonic technology that induces microscopic vibrations in needles. And these little vibrations, little but highly rapid vibrations, convey a number of important properties to needles, making them do wonderful things in a number of applications. So I'll just quote a couple of examples. For cancer biopsy application, for example, where clinicians struggle to accurately place needles deep into the body, for example, for liver biopsy, our ultrasonic technology makes the needle more visible under image guidance. It also reduces the pain and trauma associated with needle puncture, which makes it a very exciting technology for tattooing, for example. And we are also exploring recently intratumoral injections, where our technology can improve distribution of drug intratumorally. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Emily.
Hi, Sarah. That is so much more exciting than introducing a fund, which I'm going to do now. So, I'm an investment manager at Parkwalk Advisors. We are an EIS fund, and I'm not going to bore you with the details of that. Do look it up if you want to. We are an evergreen, so not the same structure as Rebecca was describing. We raise funds solely from high net worths, ultra high net worths, and through wealth managers. And we raise all year round. We have a fantastic team that raises 30 to 50 million every year, and we deploy that within 12 to 18 months. So comparable to a 250 million fund, which is deploying over 5 years, but we don't have peaks and troughs. We're continuously deploying, actively looking for opportunities. We are only invest in university spin-outs, so not the entirety of what Oxfordshire has to offer, but we do invest in the whole of the UK. And we are sector agnostic within what universities have to offer. So we do invest in anything from quantum to therapeutic platforms.
Great. I should also say, Emily, you had a little bit of time a while ago working with Oxford University Innovation as well.
Yes. Well,
So,
I didn't want to.
no, so it may be that if we touch on tech transfer, we might turn to your experience and expertise in that. Damian.
Hi everyone, I'm Damian Leung, Director at Abbey Ventures. So we're the corporate VC, so quite different to the other two. So we invest off the balance sheet, so we really don't have a time limit on our fund, or we have to fundraise. So last year we invested 75 million, and we do some LP positions as well as individual companies. Our focus is on early stage, innovative therapeutics opportunities with the view to partner. So look forward to meeting all of you and learn more about what you do. But yeah, very therapeutics focused and very much has to align with what our business is about.
And just a quick question, are there particular therapeutic areas or domains that you're particularly focused on?
Yeah, so we have 5 main therapeutic areas: oncology, immunology, neuroscience, eye care, and aesthetics, and quite specific disease indication as well. And I would say we like to build around our pipeline. So if we already have molecules in a certain disease area, we want to treat those patients that are currently not responding to our drugs, a new mechanism, new biology that we can then reach the patients that currently not getting the treatment that can meet their needs.
Great, thank you. Sakura.
Hi, I'm Sakura Holloway. I'm a director at Future Planning Capital. It's a London-based fund. We have about 450 million assets under management at the moment. Part of the fund that I focus all of my time on is the National Seed Fund, which is £110 million. And all of that money is government sourced. So our investment strategy basically aligns with where our investors are. So we focus on fusion and clean tech. We focus on defense and security, knowledge assets, which is government departments and arm's length bodies, engineering, biology, and space technology. We're a seed stage investor, which means that we can do the first ticket into either university spin-outs or technologies coming out of other companies in other ecosystems. UK-wide, we like to lead investments, but we always like to syndicate as well. And we can participate on first tickets up to 5 million. So we can do 500K as the first ticket, but we can participate in quite large rounds.
Great, thank you. And Richard?
Hey, evening, everybody. Richard Cooper, I'm the Managing Director of Oxford Innovation Finance. So we do two things. We run an angel investment group, and everyone calls it ONION. It's OION. It stands actually for Oxford Investment Opportunity Network, but we never mind if you call it ONION. It's been going 31 years. It's the oldest and largest angel investment group in the country. And it's also the most active one, according to Bowhurst, but that data might be wrong. Yeah, we actually knew it was wrong, so we gave them the correct data and we went to number 1, so that was great. And also we have a EIS fund, which is called the Oxford Innovation EIS Growth Fund. We invest across the UK. We have a bias towards Oxford, obviously, because we're based here. We invest in science and technology. We like to syndicate with other investors, and most of the investors on this panel we've invested with at some point. Yeah, and that's it. If you want to pitch to our angel investment group, we always say do the online application, and ideally you get referral in. Well, but I'm sure we'll discuss that in a bit. Okay.
Great. Well, I'm sure everyone can see that we've got a really amazing panel here. So I know we're going to get some fantastic insight. And I suspect one of the questions that it will be on everybody's mind here is, how do I get to the top of your list of attention? How do I actually pique your interest? Whether it be submitting through a web portal, sending through a pitch, an email. So, Richard, because obviously angels can be, at the earliest stages in people's consideration, can I start with you? What helps something stand out from the crowd?
Well, I think first of all you've got to understand what the particular fund or group are looking for, and understand the stats they're dealing with. So we will receive about 100 applications per month. And so we're not looking for very long at each opportunity. And so being able to condense what you do very quickly in 3 lines is absolutely crucial, because when I'm looking at opportunities, I'm looking for something exciting and novel in those kind of 3 lines, and then take it a bit further. I can't physically look at every single opportunity in a full pitch decks and business plans, and I think most people couldn't. So being able to condense that and understanding why you're interesting compared to another company is crucial. So get a friendly investor or a business mentor to say, why do you think I'm special compared to other people that people might invest in? Because you've really got to stand out and get into that kind of, what I would say is kind of top 20, those 100 I was talking about. You've got to get in the top 20.
Rebecca, can I ask the same question of you? Because, I mean, given the investment thesis for some of the people around the table, I'm guessing you also probably get lots of people approaching.
And it's deeply frustrating. I know it's deeply frustrating when you're first getting into this world and you're learning about fundraising, to find that all your emails go unanswered. It is just the reality of it. And the reality is that when you first start in venture capital, learning to manage what we rather unfriendly call deal flow in the trade is a sort of survival thing. I first started getting emails into my inbox with deals, well, it's nearly 20 years ago now, and I kind of had to learn how to deal with it, and it's magnified unbelievably in the last 20 years. I now get them from all over the world, all kinds of different tech, no research is done. Loads of the emails are actually generated by bots, especially, and quite a few of them pick out a company that they've figured out is one that I might be involved in. I got a whole string of emails a week or two ago that I said that I might be interested in this company because of a company that I wound up 12 years ago, but they must have picked the data house somewhere or something. So it just comes at you. So that's just the reality. And as much as unfair as it might be, you've got to learn to navigate that. And this is why the warm intro thing is always what people say and always what people pass on. But I kind of, there was a phase as well where people were apologising for that and kind of saying, really sorry, it's not, the industry should work better. We're going to look at everything. And some funds got set up that said, we're going to look at everything and we promise you we will fill in an online form, we'll look at it all. And I really respect that. But the reality is, if you're going to build a business from the ground up, then networking, being able to meet people, being able to connect to people in your industry, being able to connect to people who can help you is like the most important skill you probably will learn. And you need to develop. And some of those people will know investors and will help you map things out. And that's so for me, it's actually it's part of the who's going to be worth backing is understanding that they're getting the network that they're going to need to support them to build the business. So I kind of make no apology for them, really. And I might have to say that I don't necessarily speak for Long Wall. We're quite a idiosyncratic group, but I'm pretty sure we do. I don't make any apology for the fact that if something comes from somebody I know, who I know knows about a space, knows maybe I've worked with them before, then those are obviously the emails I'm going to look at and the pitch decks I'm going to take a bit of time over, and that's how it fits. But also, they probably know the thesis that we have as a fund, and they know what kind of things we like and what size of investments we're doing. And that's the other thing I'd say to people is actually, if you are a venture capital proposition, of which most of those companies in those stats probably aren't true venture capital propositions, by which I mean the capability to build really big businesses within a very quick time frame. There's only a very small third of those are. Otherwise, you need financing strategy that's around angel financing, and that's, as these guys talk about, there's a big difference between big funds and private investment. Then if you are a venture capital proposition, then there probably aren't that many funds that are going to be a fit with your proposition. And you probably can map them out. And you probably can get to know people and get in with them. And that's what you have to aim for. But it's get out there and meet people, get people who know your space, who've built businesses before, and learn about that. That's the way to start it.
Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I actually feel more like I'm on the side of the people pitching. So when we started, we go out and we find the IP, and we'll build the company for the first 18 months. But then we've got to get that company out and pitch. And when we started off, we had the 3-line emails, and we also had, with our founders, 3-minute pitch, 7-minute pitch, 10-minute pitch, 30-minute pitch. And honed it down and actually get one line explaining the company absolutely. So it does, and there's also to be attention grabbing and truthful, unfortunately. Sometimes all over that one. And then what sort of happened over the years is we've ended up with having lots of relationships with the big VCs, but it took a long time to do. It took about 6 years really before the big VCs and the big American people would come and talk to us and then start trawling through. So it took a lot of time. It was just honing everything down, and it's all about network. We never got into anybody, and we never raised any money from anybody where it was a cold pitch. It was always a warm introduction one way or another. And we used to map people out all the time. So, who are the investors in this area and how are we going to get to them?
Great. Mohammed, if I can turn to you, you've obviously been on the other side trying to cut through and equally identify the people that you should be targeting. Can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Yes, I wish I was taking some notes actually, some of the very, very important points raised here. So I started off as a PhD student back in 2014, 15 actually. So the technology that we are commercializing at Active Needle actually came out of my PhD. And soon I realized, I think one of the points mentioned was networking is very important. I used to be quite an introvert person, but one of the things that came really, really clearly in front of me that I have to become an extrovert, I have to ask questions, I have to go out there, pitch. And there are mechanisms out there which you can use to hone your pitching skills. I started off by participating in business competitions. And actually I was quite lucky as well. I was able to win a couple of competitions like this, and it gave me some cash prize to keep going. But then there are programs like enterprise fellowship programs there. They help you, and it's a whole one-year program. It's more like an applied MBA, where they tell you how to design your pitch, how to do the messaging correctly, how to do your business plan properly. So that was in Scotland actually, but then I moved to England. We were initially incubated by another company here called Lightpoint Medical. That helped us a great deal because we were able to access some of the existing investors of this company, but we kept on going with our pitching competitions and attending various events, getting out there, networking, and that helped, really helped us find the relevant investors. So what we were really looking for were the investors who could understand our technology, follow their money, and add value to the business.
Sakura, if I can turn to you, we've heard about the importance of effectively researching the interests of the investor, and making sure that you as a company align with what the investment thesis is of the investor. So can you talk a little bit about what you think companies need to be doing? I've already flagged that research is quite challenging because I know, I bet we've all been in this experience that you go and you try and find information about an investor, and sometimes you can't find very much at all, actually. Mm-hmm. So what would you recommend?
Yeah. So firstly, I'm just going to put a stat out there. Did do a little bit of homework on this. So 14% of investments that we did last year were actually cold inbound deals. So you have to look at that number. I mean, it doesn't sound like a huge number, but you have to overlay that on the fact that there's 10 of us in the investment team in the National Seed Fund, and there's 35 of us across Future Planet Capital. So there's not a lot of deals that come to us that are actually cold deals. We know something about most things that come to us. So to us, that's actually quite a high success rate of things that have come to us. We didn't know about it, and that's purely because of the quality of the research that the companies had done to come to us. And the ask was very specific, and the pitch was very specific to what we could do for them. We are very early stage investors. We follow our companies to some extent, but we can't go, multiple rounds into our companies. So what we do at that early stage is really impact-led investment. So we don't just think about where we can deploy capital, we're thinking about where we can add value. And so all of those companies that were successful in that cold inbound is because they've done that homework on what we could bring to the table apart from just the capital. So in terms of how do you get to know the investors that you want to target, we have a lot of information on our website about, our sector alignment, what do we focus on, where we like to invest and how do we like to invest. But I would say do the same thing to us that we do to you. Talk to our customers, right? So if nothing else, funds are really good at plastering a lot of information about our portfolio companies. We love to boast about them, right? Especially when they're successful. They're always out there shining. So make contact with those people and ask them about what kind of investors we are. We do this ourselves as a fund. We do a Net Promoter Score interview with our portfolio companies. So it's really important to us. That profile is important, right? So do your homework on us, not just by talking to us or looking up information about us, but look up our companies, look them up on LinkedIn, make contact with them and find out how we operate as investors, how we operate as people, how we operate as directors on your board, and what value we bring apart from just capital.
Great, really useful insight. I think that idea that the due diligence goes both ways is a really, really important message, actually. Damian, if I can turn to you, obviously you are looking at things that are very aligned to AbbVie as a company. So I suspect that you're not necessarily looking at emails that are coming in. I suspect that this issue of networks and relationships is even more important to you. Could you tell us a little bit about how you go looking for deal flow, as we're using the jargon today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm actually the first venture person outside of the US for AbbVie. So I actually still get a lot of cold inbound from investors that I don't know, because there's some smaller investors locally in the UK that I'm not familiar with. So some of those inbounds are cold inbounds, and then we form relationships with those investors and learn more about them. So yeah, I think ultimately it's the science that gets us excited, and then understanding about the team and also the people that we'll co-invest with, whether we trust their evaluation of the deal as well. Yeah.
Okay, so Emily, if I can pick up this issue of exciting science versus a team as well. What's more important, the tech or the team?
Oh God, I've been on so many panels where they've asked that question. I think team is definitely important. So I'm a scientist by background. I do get very excited by the tech. And another thing that I would add is that as Parkwalk, we like to syndicate as well. And I would say that syndicate is probably the third person around that table. So team, tech, and syndicate is extremely important. And that goes back perhaps to what Sakura said about researching the investors that you want to have in that syndicate and that you want to have around your board. That is really important to the success of the company going forward. The expertise that they bring, the value add that they bring, and also how aligned are they with you and your vision, and how aligned are they between themselves, and have they worked together before, and do they have complementary skills? I think that's really important to think about as well. So from my point of view though, team is also really important. At the end of the day, you're going to have to form a relationship with your investor, as we've said before. It's really important, therefore, that you get along and that you like the team. So I think, actually, to go back to what was said about forming that relationship at the beginning, I think it's also, I would go a little bit further and say it's really important to foster that relationship long term. And I would say that while you're fundraising as well, don't just think about that first introduction, but also the follow-on. Don't forget to, promptly answer the questions, or, be responsive when going through due diligence, for example. I've had founders that just go AWOL for months and then come back, and maybe that's a little bit off-putting. Don't forget that you're trying to build a relationship long term, and perhaps even if the investor comes back with a no, it's still quite important perhaps to respond to that in a positive way, maybe, and maybe you'll come across that investor again at a future round, or perhaps in your next endeavor. So I think it's really important to think about these things long term. Yeah.
Richard, I guess that's an issue for you as well, because I know with Onion that companies can come back to you if perhaps there's a particular milestone or something else that they need to bring. So what would your recommendation be if you don't cut through immediately?
I think it's a really good point Emily made. I mean, staying in touch with your investors is absolutely key. And I see quite a few companies who will raise money, disappear, not really communicate very well, and then come back and say, can I have some more money? Well, it never goes down very well, so you've got to be a bit careful. But yeah, in terms of if you don't cut through first time, what I would tend to do is get someone who's an industry expert to get hold of that investor and say, actually, I think you should take a second look, or somebody they trust. I mean, I had a company last week who managed to get to 4 people I trust, and they all rang me on the same day, and I'm thinking, this person's amazing. How have they got through to these 4 people? But it does make a difference because, as I said before, you've not got long enough to really do serious DD on these companies. But you can also you can cold call and say, look, can you take a look or give me some feedback? I mean, one of the things you'll find with most people in early stage investing is they're usually from an entrepreneurial background. They want to help, and they will give you help if you ask for it. It's just whether they've got time to. It's the crucial bit. I mean, I'm always trying to help these companies, give them some hints. I'll never lie to anyone and say it's good, but I'll tell them the truth. Because it's not going to help anyone if I lie to them and say, oh, yeah, I might look at it in 6 months. There's a reason I'm not looking at a company right now, and the sooner they know it, the better.
Can I just come back to this issue of the tech or the team? And Jim, I'm going to ask you about this in a moment as well. When you see a pitch deck, Richard, you know, if a company is invited to come and pitch to your network, what's the balance in terms of the pitch deck, in terms of focusing on the tech, the science versus the people that are sitting behind?
It's a brilliant point, and one of my bugbears actually. And you should always think like an investor. An investor doesn't just invest in tech; they invest in a business opportunity. So you've got to spend. We always say in a 5-minute pitch, no more than 2 minutes on the tech. And the rest of it's got to be about the business model, how you're going to grow it, funding, how you're going to fund it, the finances, etc. And I reckon we still get 60% of people who will still try and do 5 minutes on just the tech. So if you don't learn anything else today, that's one thing to learn, because it doesn't raise investment. And certainly not from us, anyway.
Okay, so Jim, a slight modification to that question. I'm going to ask you now, team, tech, market, opportunity.
Right, so I was just having a look around to see if any of our portfolio teams are in the audience. I can't say anyone, so I can tell you it's the tech for us. So we're very much focused on the tech, and actually at such early stage, frequently there isn't a market and there isn't a product. So we will find the tech and then we'll find the team. And actually, if you look over, the average length of our investment is somewhere between 10 and 14 years. We don't quite know yet, but it's at least nine and a half years. So 10 to 14 years. We might frequently have 2 or 3 teams across that period. We have to have a relationship with the team. The team has to be good. We'll often recycle the teams. But it's the tech for us right at the start, and that's just the nature of our investing. I think if you're in other sectors, then it's all about the team, and actually the tech doesn't actually matter that much. So I think it really is very sector specific.
We've started to talk about the idea of cutting through and standing out. Once you've started that engagement, obviously we've heard from Emily and Richard. Keep in touch. This is not something that you kind of, leave and turn your attention to when you've got an idle 5 minutes. But of course, one of the things that I'm sure all of you will know extremely well is just because you've kind of started engagement with a prospective investment, that doesn't mean to say that you're actually going to get through and finally invest. So, Rebecca, can I start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about the process that you go through for this kind of whittling of the funnel, if you like?
Yeah, so I think I'm probably relatively typical of the venture capital firms that are kind of, making a select few investments each year, let's put it that way, that we'll probably, typically, we'll all meet several businesses. Some people will be a bit more selective, only meet a few and not take the time to do it. Other times, when I first started doing this, I made a point of taking lots of meetings because I wanted to see a lot of businesses and get a lot of exposure as part of a way of building up some experience base, frankly. And you're kind of part of that mix. That's the first step. That's when the people bit comes into play, and the chemistry, and do you think this team is going to be able to build something? And you're feeling that mix, and then you go through a process then where, I think experienced investors, you're kind of sitting in the room and you do get a bit of a gut reaction. I believe in gut reactions. Gut reactions are based on a lot of experience, and you only get a good gut reaction because it's ticking the boxes of market, people, it's kind of ticking all your kind of boxes, and you think, actually, this could be something. And by the end of a meeting, I've probably thought about the cap table, the deal structure, the whole works, because I'm ticked off whether I think there's actually a deal to be done. But I've been doing this for quite a while, and you will also meet people who are new in the game, and you can't tell that by age or anything like that, because it's venture capital is a very young industry, and we're all inexperienced and we're all learning as we go. And lots of people are innovating with business models, and lots of people are experimenting with doing things different ways, and we're all kind of like saying we're doing things slightly differently. So it's part of that. It's not like going into banks that have been doing this for centuries and they have a model and they have algorithms and systems. So it's just about that dynamic. So we will all do things slightly different ways, and within firms we will all do things slightly different ways. But the process from there will be, it's a process of a mixture of due diligence, which is, I think there's two kinds of due diligence. There's the first kind, which is this really a proposition that we think could become a really big opportunity, or it could return what we need for the fund? Whatever returns, we each have different return requirements or targets or goals. That's the first thing. Can it meet our targets? Is that sort of thing. So we'll look at the market, we'll look at the people, we'll look at all that sort of stuff. And then there's a different sort of due diligence, which I kind of call the arse-covering due diligence, which is just the tick box items that happen before you close a deal. You make sure that there's nothing wrong. And, the first one is conviction building. Do you believe in this opportunity? And then much later on, post-agreed, that, once you've got conviction, a typical process will be meetings, discussions, maybe some calls, some reference calls with people in the market or whatever. Whatever you feel you need to build conviction, then terms and a term sheet, and you kind of agree a deal. But as I say, some of us will have kind of asked about the cap table and have asked about what kind of investors there were for and what the last valuation on the business was, probably in the first meeting, because we just need to know if it's worth taking a second meeting, because is it a deal that can be done? But you agree terms, and it's a negotiation that isn't a kind of a haggle at the market, because at the end of the day, we're going to be working together probably for 10 years. We need alignment. We need a shared view of what the business is going to become, and all that, it gets captured in how you go into business together. So, how much are we going to pay for shares, at what valuation, over what time, what terms go with it. And then we do more. I would then have, and we'll all have, I'm sure, our processes internally that are about an investment committee, partners. In Longwall, we don't have a separate investment committee. The partners we all are each other's investment committee. So I have to win conviction with the other partners in the fund. Do we all want to back this business? And that's a process. I'll get them the company in to present to everybody. I'll write a paper. I'll get grilled on it. So if I'm ringing up the company and saying, I need to understand this better, it's because I need to hold my own in a meeting on Monday, and you go through that process, and then at the very end there's some tick box items, and the very end of that might be a director's questionnaire which asks people what their shoe size is and if they've ever been convicted of anything. Because, and you'd be surprised, I know a few horror stories where some stuff has come out of the woodwork at the very end of that process, and then there's legals. I'm writing a whole list, but that's the process, and it can take any length of time. Some firms will do things quite quickly and are happy to do that and will turn the handle very quickly. Other people take a little bit longer. When I'm asked how long do you take, I always say, how quickly do you like to get married? Because that's basically what it is. It's actually easier to, I've said this so many times, it's one of my pithy things I say at panels, but it is easier to get divorced than it is to get out of a shareholders agreement. We will be working closely together. I like to take a little bit of time, get some interaction, and I think the companies should have allowance for it to take a bit of time if they're going to take a serious investor in that's going to take a chunk of their business and work with them and sit around the board table. You need to build that relationship, and it's all about trust. It takes a little bit of time. I like to see the companies going through some ups and downs in that period, actually. How do they deal with, how does that come across? Are they talking to me openly? Am I able to help? It's absolutely no good to me if I get into a relationship, if I'm going to go into a company where the relationship with the CEO is not productive, it's not positive, it's not creating ideas. That's mutual chemistry. It's me as well as them. It's the thing. It might be great for somebody else, but it's not. Those are all the things that come into the mix. That should take time. I think. And I caution you to do the same back. Test your relationship with those parties. Throw some bad news at them and see if they run for the scales, whether they've got real conviction, and test how it's going to work for you when you have bad news. Are they going to be helpful? Are they going to be constructive? That's what it is. It's the most privileged job in the world to be part of those journeys and to be able to do it with multiple people. But it needs to be a constructive relationship for the company as well.
So I'm going to ask Emily and then Sakura to add to what Rebecca has said, if you think there are things that you want to add about this kind of going through the funnel process to hopefully get to the point where you've got the legals and there aren't terrible misgivings about the shoe size that mean that you don't actually sign the deal. So Emily.
Oh, yes, I was recently talking to our cohort of students at Founders at Cambridge, and we talking to them about due diligence, how to prepare their data room, and etc., which you've done a very good job of. And one of the things that I was really keen to mention to them, and again going back to the relationship here, is during a due diligence, the investor is trying to understand what you're trying to do, and the most off-putting thing as well is if you somehow get diffident or offended by questions or somehow defensive, and I would just urge you not to do that, not to take it that way. I mean, we invest in university spin-outs, of course, so all the science that we're looking at is really cutting-edge science, and we are sector agnostic, and not any individual investor can't be an expert on all of the things that we are looking at, and so it does take a little bit of patience. We will ask. I will ask stupid questions. I will perhaps ask you to go through things at a baby pace. I will have to dig into your financials. I will probably ask you to change this and that. I think any investor will probably come and maybe challenge your assumptions, maybe challenge your market assumptions, your financial assumptions, your most certainly your financial projections, and that's okay, and that's fine, and that's actually we're not doing that to shoot you down. Yes, it is part of the whittling down process, but mainly we're doing it to really understand what you're trying to build, and make sure that it stands, and usually We both want that. Yeah, we both want to challenge it and make sure that it still stands, and that's good for both the founder and the investor and everyone together. So it's really actually, I would say, a team process. I would look at due diligence as being more of a team process, and building that relationship with the investor. So it's something that you should think of, going in together, I think.
Sakura, anything that you want to throw into the pot?
Yeah, just one thing I'm going to pick up on what Richard said, actually, in terms of keeping in touch with your investors or people that you want to keep warm, please don't send emails that says catch up. I'm pretty sure
every email talks about
or
catch
next
up
steps.
I get requests for catch up with I've never met.
We're more likely to call IT and say, look, the spam filter's broken again, than we are to open that email, right? So we're at Thursday evening, there's probably 150 emails in our collective inboxes that says catch up. So just if an investor says, go away and do some homework, come back to us, actually tell us what homework you've done. So that's my bugbear.
Thank you.
But in terms of adding to the process, what is it that we do that might be a little bit different or added to the general sort of VC diligence process? We have a formal part of our process, which is actually, which involves an advisory committee. So this advisory committee is 12 members, and these are people that are not nominated by us as the investment team. These are nominated by our investors, so our LPs. And so they're sector experts. They're industry leaders in their own right. They're CEOs of companies. They're exited entrepreneurs. And we put companies that we're taking through diligence in front of the advisory committee to be quizzed by them. And we as the investors are observers in this meeting. And the reason we do that is because the market element and the understanding of where this particular technology is going to solve a real world problem is really important, right? Is someone developing a fantastic, sexy bit of technology for the sake of developing technology? It's not investable. So where does this actually solve a real world problem is really important. So that's why we have a lineup of sector experts who will quiz the entrepreneurs on where this actually fits in the ecosystem and where this is solving a real world issue. But the advantage of doing that as well, I mean, it's not a scary experience. These are friendly people to our investment team. So when we put companies in front of them, the point is it can be a two-way conversation, right? And I keep going back to this, due diligence on us as we do on you, because it's really important that you treat this as a two-way conversation and understand that these are people you're going to work with in the future. And a lot of what comes out of our advisory committee meetings is a huge network of introductions. So entrepreneurs walk away from those meetings with the panel of members saying, I can introduce you to either investor X, Y, or Z, or someone in the industry that you need to speak to, or someone that's developing something similar. So I think the point that I want to make as you're going through diligence and understanding the process of the investors is understand who is behind the investment team, who's helping them make the decision as well, who might be their key opinion leaders, and can you get in front of them at any point of that process? Or is there a gatekeeper in that process the whole time?
Richard, if perhaps you might be able to reflect whether you think there are parallels in terms of what we heard from funds versus angels. And then Mohammed, I'd love to come and get your reflections from, again, having been on the receiving end of this. So Richard.
Yeah, I think with angel investors, they do a similar process, but usually have less money than funds. So you're having to answer a lot of questions, similar questions to a lot of different investors, but they're all asking the same thing. So I would always say to entrepreneurs to make sure you create a Q&A list, because the questions are going to keep coming up. The other thing I would say is speak to your investment manager. I think we've talked about it being kind of about the process they go through. I mean, if they start doing DD on you, the investment manager is your friend. You've got to work with that investment manager because they want you to succeed and they want you to go through the investment committee because they wouldn't be putting the work in otherwise. So they are really keen. They are your friend. the IC or the investment committee are the ones that they've got to get through. So you're working together to get through that investment committee. And I think with angels, you've just got to be patient. Maybe sometimes you want to have as many in a meeting as you can, unless your investment manager tells you one of them's awkward, and then have a separate meeting with them, because they could ruin your whole investment. Just bear that in mind, because you do get certain individuals who will make very strong points, not necessarily backed by evidence, which will blow everyone else out of the water, and then just say, and those investors all go, that guy must know what he's talking about, I'm not investing. And actually, sometimes I'll ask that person afterwards, what did you mean by that? Because I've never heard of that. Oh yeah, I just said it. I didn't really mean it. You've just killed the investment. But
strong opinions
anyway,
loosely held.
That's the nuance of angel investing. But I would always say there's always an investment manager or a gatekeeper there who really understands the investors they're working with. Use those people. They know the investors. They know the difficult ones. They know the ones with big checks. You should always use those people.
So Mohammed, sorry, quickly.
Do you mind if I just pick up on something? I think something Richard said around creating that FAQ, like create your list of Q&A, is really important, right? Because what is super important in that process while you're going through diligence with multiple investors at the same time is you don't change the story. We know each other, right? So when we pick up the phone to each other, it's like, oh, that was the market segment that they were talking about, and that was their use of funds. That's interesting. That's not what we heard. So be really careful about the message that you're putting out there, and be consistent and stick to it, right? Just because someone tells you that that's not the right strategy, or that's not how much you need to raise, or that's not how much money you need to spend on something, does not mean you immediately go and change the story. You take that feedback and you go away and do the homework on it. And if you need to stick to your story, then you stick to it. But be consistent through the process.
Thanks. Mohammed.
Yeah, so for starters, we have mainly been funded by angels and angel networks. We have approached VCs a couple of times, and we haven't been successful, partly because, perhaps my co-panelists could correct me actually, but one of the key messaging that we've got from the VCs is that they're looking for commercial traction. They expect us to be in the market and making sales, which we haven't. But for our angels, we have been lucky actually. Most of the angels who have invested in Active Needle have followed their money as well over the past 8 years. And for them, the key thing has been obviously the technology. It's very obviously simple, what we are developing, anybody gets it. And the fact that we are operating in the cancer space, people have either experienced cancer through their family or relatives. They can understand that application side of thing, and they value the team. They value what they're looking for is that you should have obviously clear defined IP, strong IP. And one of the other important things that the angels and the retail kind of investors look for is a very clear and concise message of how this team is going to deliver 10x or 20x and how many years.
I'm going to change tack a little bit now and look a little bit more at trends in technology and also the economic environment that we're working in. So Jim, can I start with you? You've talked a little bit about the fact that OSC is, you're not just investing, but you're building ventures. And it was interesting to hear you say that maybe the market opportunity isn't the first thing that you're looking at. What are the things that are really exciting you at the moment? And where are you going and looking for interesting opportunities?
Yeah. So obviously everyone's been talking about AI for a bit. We've actually been investing in AI since we started in 2015, but applied AI. And actually, Oxford University is quite a big centre of applied AI, so particularly in medical diagnostics. And that whole area, we're just getting to the point of sales and marketing. And actually, that's actually quite exciting, watching some of the companies take off. I think one of the hottest areas I think we've got at the moment is earth sciences. So natural hydrogen, fusion power, We've got water mining for rare minerals. So there's a whole area around there that we've opened up we think is pretty good. And then quantum computing. So we started investing in quantum computing back in 2016, and we did think at that point it was a 20-year timescale. I think now we're looking at from here, it's probably only 5 years before you've got a working quantum computer with quantum supremacy, and that's going to bring with it a whole new raft of breakthroughs that are going to happen. So there's actually quite a lot going on. It's pretty exciting at the moment.
And Emily, from your perspective, given that Parkwalk is looking at IP coming out of universities, are there particular areas that you're increasingly turning to and looking at?
Well, interesting about the AI, I think probably we're also very early investors in AI, and I think probably co-invested in some of the very early AI coming out of Oxford. And I think one of the trends that we're seeing there, and also more generally across the board, is a sort of starting to move from building tech, although of course that's what OSE is doing, but really looking more at building solutions. I think AI started out where it was all about the algorithms, it was all about the tech, and definitely there's now a shift towards, well, you know, you said applied AI, and exactly, there's now a shift towards the solution, less emphasis on the tech, because actually it doesn't really matter if you're using the fanciest, the newest AI algorithm out there. What you want is the best solution, what works best for where you want to apply it. And I think there's been perhaps something that we still need to work on, but we're the entrepreneurs that are coming back, that have done it already and are starting again, have sort of learned that lesson. And so now we are looking more towards solution-based technology or applied technology, which is really important, and it's just then more appealing as well to the investor, and obviously because it is more readily taken up by the market. So I think that is a trend that we're starting to see, and something that I think we need to work on a little bit more.
And Damian, from your perspective, are you seeing particular trends? Obviously, you're operating in healthcare, the pharma industry, and this application of AI into diagnostics, drug discovery itself as a process. How is that translating through into the kinds of things that AbbVie is looking to invest in?
Yeah, so I think it's applying the AI on the data is where the data comes from. So we really focus on human data, so human tissues, human genetics, to find new targets that are validated to lead to diseases. And so it's your data set, or using AI to design molecules, then ultimately is how much data do you have to apply the tech, where you get your data from. And so I think that to us is more important than the AI tech itself, is really the data that we can gather and use. And then from a therapeutics perspective, I think tissue-specific delivery, genetic medicine, those are new modality that we will go and explore. I mean, we started with small molecule drugs, then we've gone into biologics, and so now it's going to be the next frontier, is using genetic medicine and delivering drugs very specifically to tissues and to cancer cells. And yeah.
So are you investing in delivery mechanisms as well as the therapeutic, or are you looking to combine diagnostic tools with therapeutic approaches?
Yes, so we'll use the diagnostic tools to find the patient and to find the target, and then create a molecule that can specifically target the tissue or that has that target, because you get a lot of side effects if you're not targeting very specifically to that tissue. So pretty much every bit of that.
Right, okay. And Richard, from your perspective, are you seeing particular areas that angels are thinking are very sexy at the moment and they want to go for?
Well, AI especially. I mean, I think in the last, we run what we call showcases, and we take 8 companies in each. And I think in the last 2, every single company mentioned AI at some point. And I have to do the questions, and I have to ask, what does the AI do? Every single time. So it's starting to annoy me. So it's not, it's become a bit of a buzz, and sometimes the AI is not doing anything to help the company. They just shove it in there because it looks cool. And the same thing happened with apps 10 years ago. Everyone would say, I've got an app. Now everyone would go, so? I mean, it's just something that you use. So, I mean, it is good to see AI coming through. We're seeing a lot of green tech. Green tech's obviously really important. And quite a lot of mental health technologies coming through at the moment for obvious reasons.
Great. I'm going to pause at this stage and I'm going to throw open to questions. So I think we've got some roaming, there we go, we do, microphones. So can I ask, if you're asking a question, do you mind giving us your name and please don't give us kind of like a detailed background of what your company does, but if you were an entrepreneur, maybe you could say entrepreneur or scientist or something like that. One word, please. Great. Who would like to kick us off? Stunned silence. I'm amazed. I thought I was going to see a sea of hands going up at the back.
Thanks, Tom. So, Jemima King from Richardson's Chartered Accountants. I was just wondering, how important is exit value? You talked about the team and the tech, and often when companies pitch, they talk about their exit values, and it feels like sometimes it's just finger in the air, and there's a lot of criticism over the exit values.
I'm happy to kick off on that because it is for funds that are a certain size that are looking for certain returns. It's what could this become is absolutely everything. Some of the tech funds in London, it's their first filter. You know, what could this return as 10x? So let's assume we get 10%. Could this be a whatever company? And it is absolutely is the first filter for funds of that sort of structure. But just putting down, there's got to be some basis for that. And when you're doing it a little while, you kind of have a bit of a feel, but you also need to understand from the company. That's why market is, everybody talks about what's the size of the market, because at the end of the day, if you're successful in 5 years' time, 8 years' time, you're going to be, somebody else is going to be valuing the business based on how much revenue that product could generate in that market. So that is, it's get understanding that. Based on whatever you're assuming your business is going to be, what's your business model and the revenues it's going to generate, understanding how big it can be is going to dictate what your financing strategy is, as in who you can raise money from and who you can get to. And one of the biggest challenges actually in medtech is that, particularly I think, is that there's the quite often it costs so much to develop the product, and the exit value isn't high enough always to give the investors they need, return that they need to get to it. And that's, you can map, with experienced people, if you talk to experienced people, you can map that out from the start, and that needs to add up. You need to add up that you're going to provide the right returns to investors on the full journey. So it is really important. If it is just finger in the air, then it's probably meaningless, but being able to put that down and investors that people talk to being able to say what their targets are and what they are aiming for is really important as well, because that alignment of trying to get to the same goal is what can absolutely stop companies in their tracks a few years down the road. So.
Yeah, I think from an angel perspective, I think the most important thing is that you mention exit, because what an investor does not want to happen is that their money just gets tied up. It's not an investment then, it's just giving money away to a business. And I always say to companies, just make sure you mention exit, not necessarily values, because I think some of these really early stage companies are just making a number up. And when investors have seen hundreds and hundreds of pitches, they probably don't recognise the value of that. But as long as they've mentioned it, it makes a big difference.
Well, I just add just one little thing, because one thing that really always has got my attention is if people understand how that exit's going to happen. So, you know, the standards, it used to be that the slide just said exit, M&A or IPO. That's it. That's, I mean, honestly, that's what deck after deck after deck, you just got that, oh, we must have an exit slide, M&A or IPO. And it's like, well, who might buy you? Why might they buy you? Who are the big players in this market? What are you doing that they don't have? What you know, or if IPO, well, you know, is it a story that really is that sort of business? Who are the comparable companies? You should want to understand this. If you're building a business, which businesses do you want your business to be like? Actually, it's work you can do. It's at the tip of your fingertips to just understand businesses that have gone on that journey and who you can compare yourself to, and what's all the journey they've gone and why have they gone on that journey. That's probably the beginning of your networking, is talk to the people that have done this or are doing that, because they'll know people and they'll be really willing to share their experience with you and their education with you. So I say, you know, it's a small question, but actually unpicks a whole thing that's about starting at the beginning and understanding how to build a business.
Can I just add to that? Because I think it's really fundamental, the exit value. And as you've both said, I just want to highlight, the exit value is the most important number, really. But on the other hand, as you say, for early stage companies, it's a bit of a made up number. Yeah. And you really have to marry those two things together and do as much work as possible on trying to make that exit value as accurate as possible. And you really need to then go from that exit value and work your way back to understand how much money you're going to need, does it make sense, and what your valuation should be now in order to sort of get there. And and that's just, really fundamental for the investor, but again, also for you, because if you then realize that, in your best dreams, that number is just not going to add up to everything that you're going to need to spend to get there, then that's not good for you or for anyone, really. So it's really good to understand that as early as possible.
Great advice. I think we had a hand from the gentleman here.
Hi, my name is Sujit Tangad Paliwar. I'm a founder of BioLegends. Thank you for a wonderful discussion, first of all. So I think I'm a very new founder, I would say. So I think the fresh founders or the new founders which are not coming from the Oxford University or spin out. So I worked for 7 years in the companies after my PhD, and then I started, I saw a few problems in the industry, and I started a company to solve those industry problems. So the problem is, when we go to the investors say, you show me the traction. When we go to the companies say, you show me the data. And to generate that data, we need funding. So most of the founders, they trap in this triangle. So what are your suggestions? And definitely angels. So the study which we wanted to do needs a huge amount of money. I would say few millions. So angels, they may not fund those bigger ticket size. So how do you, and the problem which we wanted to solve, actually the bigger problem for the, let's say I'm working for the pharmaceutical industry. We wanted to solve the problem for pharmaceutical industry. So actually we wanted to solve $1 billion problem, but we need few millions. So how to get those initial few millions to solve $1 billion problems?
Bring it down to a slightly smaller number and grant, because, and you probably can, and grant funding. That's what grant funding's for. That's what the Innovate UK funding is for, is bridging that gap. And you will find angels that will do check. If it's an exciting proposition, you can raise $1 million or $2 million from angels, and angel groups, and angel co-investment funds. So that's almost all of our companies. I think every single company in our portfolio has had a lot of money from Innovate UK in the early stages to exactly bridge that gap. It's not just Innovate UK, there are other grants and that sort of thing around, but and if you, and to be quite frank, if you can't get people interested or things interested, then maybe there's just not the biggest proposition there that you think it is. It's your market testing as well, is getting people interested in it. And this is your life and your career. If you're not getting a load of positive feedback, then you've got your own opportunity costs. You know, learn from that and do something else instead. And that's just, you know, and that's not, it's not, you know, I feel that really acutely actually for a lot of, for founders, because it's your life. So, you know, if you're going to, and it's really hard work to build a business, really only go for something when you've really got evidence that it's going there. So, but that's what grants are for.
And partnering, if I may add.
Yeah.
Partnering early, so we have funded companies that would usually be really capital intensive, which is not our model, but we have gone with them because they had an early partnership model, which brings in revenue. And sometimes you have to be a little bit creative about your business model. It might not be the end business model. You might start with something slightly different, but that early partnering, brings in a little bit of revenue that helps, that helps your journey. B, validates the proposition at an early stage, you know, and sometimes can also benefit you in other ways, because if you partner with a strategic, you can also get input, a lot of value of a lot of industry experts that are going to help you on your journey as well. So I would say that's a really good thing to think about early on.
Gentleman here in the...
Hi, Tom Cleaver, CEO of Cognition Energy Limited. We do battery testing as a service. You've mentioned before team and market and what's most important. Market, how do, for companies who are struggling to define the market, as you said, it may not exist yet, or it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to find the information on the market, because you might be able to work out how many cars are sold per year, but a subset buried deep down in the supplier network, and the companies can't find that information. They don't want to make it up to present it to you because it's clearly wrong. How should they present that to you? How should they find that information? What is credible for you and your investors?
Who wants to go at that one?
I think the model would be slightly different. Oh, I was going to say the model would be slightly different for OSE, for example. From our point of view, what I'm looking for is a technology that is disruptive, that is a step change, but not so disruptive that there is no market for it yet. So ideally, you would have something that's really making a difference, but that can slot into the current supply chain, or that is at least understandable by the current market. Otherwise, you're on a very long journey of educating the customer and disrupting the market, which is possible, and I'm sure you're going to talk about that, but it is a longer journey. It takes a longer time, and you will have to build that resilience as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think our biggest failure rate is around product market fit. So you can get a technology that clearly is the best technology in the world, but the market's not ready, or we develop the technology without listening to the market. So we're very, very hot now on operating partners, where we try to make sure that as the technology is being developed, we're talking to the end users or the supply chain as we're going through it, to try and make sure we fit in with what's going on. But it's difficult, because we've definitely lost some companies where we're ahead of the market, but we can't carry on financing them for another 5 years waiting for the market to catch up.
I really relate to that challenge as well, because that's the journey that startups go on as they go towards product market fit, is actually defining that market from having it could be anybody with a car, to which particular type of car with which particular type of problem, and which is actually going to be our customer. That's the journey that from when we've invested to when the next investors can get more conviction. You've got clarity of that because you've sold some. You've got you get that clarity as you go on that journey, but you probably won't be able to buy the data from research reports. But if you go out and talk to people, there are back of the envelope ways of kind of estimating it. That you can just map out, well, how many of this, or make some assumptions, just kind of like make it a bit of a leap of faith that we kind of think it probably of this. Well, how many people do that? And you can, that's what I would have to do for my investment paper if I was going to invest, is kind of have some basis for making that assumption. So it's not scientific and it's not rigorous, but it gives you a kind of a feel, which is all you can do sometimes at the beginning. But then as you develop as a company, you'll start to be able to put the evidence onto that. It's like putting the evidence onto your business model, and then you get product market fit, and you kind of, now you have a business plan. But it isn't until you've got that evidence that you really have a business plan. So.
I think the other thing as well is pivoting. So quite a few of our companies have got actually the technology it's built on aiming for one market you can use in a different market in a different way. It's keeping your mind open enough to suddenly go, well, actually that one's not quite working, but I have built something valuable and it's probably more useful over there.
Sakura, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just wanted to quickly add, I think it's really important to understand what the adoption looks like for your customer as well in that sector. If the market is not quite there yet, they must be doing something else instead of what you might be developing, right? So understanding whether there's a complete replacement of what they're doing on a factory floor or a manufacturing process or something, or does something that you offer them add on to what they're already doing makes a difference to actually creating a market? Because I think if you have to rip everything up that they might have in their process and replace it, that makes a much harder sell than something that you might actually be able to slot in line with what they're already doing, but actually improves their efficiency, their process, their profitability, right? So I think that's important to understand as well.
Yeah, I would just add, it's really about understanding pain points. You know, is there a problem that you're actually trying to solve here, and does your customer recognise it as a problem? From a previous life, I've done quite a bit, particularly in life sciences and health, and unfortunately, particularly around digital technologies, over the years I've seen a lot of people with great ideas, what they think are great ideas, with solutions that actually don't have a problem that's recognised by the customer base. Yeah, so I think, I mean, Damian, I suspect that you spend a lot of time going to conferences like the bio conferences, bio partnering ones, where you have lots of conversations with people which aren't necessarily sort of about the transaction, but are you sharing intelligence and information that can help companies sort of really dive into the problem.
Yeah, I think something I usually say to people, just because you can does not necessarily mean you should. You know, you gotta find the unmet need. Why someone need this drug, right? Who are the patients, and then build the science around it, rather than this is the cool science, but I don't know how to, you know, what I'm going to use it for yet. I'll find it later on. And for us, it will be like, well, tell us how you're going to use this tech, and then what would the drug look like? Then we will be able to invest together.
Great.
People talk about painkillers and vitamins, don't they? They talk about painkillers and vitamins. Is it a painkiller or is it a vitamin? That's the concept of, is it, you know, kind of nice to have, or actually doing something. And you can learn a lot from talking to potential customers about that.
Absolutely. Right. Gentleman here in the middle.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Julian Dye. I'm founder of Oxfordshires, which is a regenerative tissue scaffold company. I just wanted to follow up on the first question about sort of exits and valuation and strategy. The dilemma which sort of startups developing technology face is how to realise the value, and the factors which sort of come into play, and particularly mindful for us would be geography, the regulatory territories to realise the market. That takes investment and relatively early stage to get your product out onto market. The second is really the pipeline development. So once you have established indications for use for a specific product, with a specific sort of regulatory package, it opens up the ability to exploit that, to bring in kind of other elements of technology to really harvest that. So the question to the panel is, what stage should one kind of consider sensible exit, and what type of exit in order to realise these sort of value, sort of possibly commercial value inflection points?
Great. So a great question. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask Jim just to quickly say, perhaps from your perspective, some of the factors that you undoubtedly think about when you have this question. And then I'm going to wrap up, and there'll be opportunity for you to talk individually to many of the people here over a drink.
Yep. I think actually the answer to that depends on the fund and how far they want to back you and go through. From our perspective, we want to get, it depends on on the product. So if it's a small molecule therapeutic, a drug, clinic or post-clinic, if it's a medtech device, a diagnostic device, we actually want to get it approved. And unfortunately, you have to get approved by the FDA to open up the markets elsewhere in the world. So we're targeting America, although we're trying to keep almost everybody here, so they can do it again next time out. And actually, an FDA approval, then we'd look at disposing of it. If it's deep tech, it depends on what it's doing, whether it's an ag tech product or a quantum computer. I think every product is slightly different, which is a very unhelpful answer, I know. But they can all answer it better over a glass of wine, probably later.
Absolutely, which is what I'm going to let everybody do. So I'm sure that you agree with me that we've had some incredible insights, and thank you very much to everybody for being so frank in sharing information with everybody. So please, can you join me in thanking the panel?
So thank you to Sarah and indeed to each and every one of you on our panel this evening for dedicating your time and sharing your expertise with everybody. As Sarah said, we would love you to join us downstairs for some drinks and canapes and the opportunity to network and connect with one another. Importantly, just to mention as well, we have some organisations who are exhibiting downstairs. One of them, Rebecca mentioned earlier, Innovate UK. So if any of you want to have any discussions, as Rebecca mentioned, on bridging in terms of grants, etc., we have Barclays Demo Directory down there as well. And lots of other organisations for you to connect and speak to. So I'm not going to hold you back any longer. Please join us downstairs for drinks, canapes and some networking. And thank you all for joining us this evening.